Okay, so the first thing I want to do today is to, as I started with yesterday, is I want to look a little bit at place value, and I want to simply just count up the numbers that we know starting from 0. So in maths, all numbers are made up of 10 different digits. We've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, when we get down to 9, what happens then is we go back to 0 and we write 1 here. Okay? And this is called place value. So the fact that this 1 here has a different value to this 1 here means that is what place value is about. So if a 1 appears here, we can see that this is 10. And if a 1 appears here, we can see that it's just 1. This works with everything. So say, for example, I had, if I started with 10, and I count, well, if I start with 00 here, and I count up in tens. So what this would do is this would go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Okay, so what we can see here is that this one here now represents 100, where here it represents 10. Now, the way that we get from a number in this column to a number in this column is, from here to here, is we're multiplying by 10. Because what you can see, this is 10 lots of a number in this column, okay? So if I want here, this 10 is made up of 10 lots of this 1, okay? I should have highlighted this whole thing here. This one is made up of 10 lots of this column here, times 10 times 10, okay? It also works with 1,000. So if I did this if I started with triple zeros here, 0, 0, 0, and I count up in hundreds, we get 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, and then 1,000. So this time, this one has a different value to this one. And the link between this number here and this number here is that this one is 10 times that, okay? So what I want to do is, let me just go back up here, and I'm going to add the names to these columns, okay? So here, we might know that these ones are units. In fact, let me just change my colour of pen. These ones are units, okay? And these are tens, okay? So what that means is that these tens are 10 lots of that unit. So in other words, a number in this column, if the same digit appears in this column here, it's 10 times as big, okay? So here we've got our units again, we've got our tens, and we've got our hundreds, okay? And what we can see is if a unit appears in this column, if a digit appears in this column here, it's 10 times as big as when it appears in this column, okay? And here we can see, this time we've got units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. Okay, so, and then again, what we can see is that 1,000 is going to be 10 times bigger than 100. Okay, and we can sort of think about that by thinking something like this. If I did, well, yeah, if I did, let's have a look at these. So if I did like this, it's going to be a funny one. if I did 1, add 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 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, this equals 10. Okay, so from this we know that 10 times 1 equals 10. Okay, now let's think about if I altered these. Okay, so let's say I'm going to say that this is 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. So if I've got 10 lots of 10, okay, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 20. What have I done? I went wrong, sorry. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So there we go, 100. So if I've got 10 lots of 10, that equals 100. Okay, now let's have a look at if these were 100. Okay, if I've got here, if I'm going to say that all of these are 100, okay, now I've got 10 lots of 100, so let's count up again. So this is 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000, okay, so 0 there, 0 there, and then 1, 0. So I can see 10 lots, so 10 lots of 100 equals 1000, okay? And this kind of is showing us the pattern for timesing by 10. So if we see here, when we times 1 by 10, we got 10. When we times 10 by 10, we got 100. And when we times 10 by 100, we got 1000, okay? And if I repositioned those back here, and remember we've got units, tens, and hundreds, okay? We can see that we've gone from 1 to 10 to 100 to 1000. Okay, so let me change back my pen to black. So here we go, and that's what we've got. And so remember, each time we times by 10, each time we're moving this way, for each column we move, that means that we've times by 10. Okay, so that's the main thing I want to let you know. When a number moves from this column to this column, we've times by 10. When a number moves from this column to this column, we've times by 10. When a number moves from this column to this column, we've times by 10. So let's look at a number and let's see if we can times it by 10, okay? So let's say that here, I'm going to write my columns here. So we've got units, tens, and hundreds. Okay. So let's say I've just got 5 here, okay? So if I want to do 5 times 10, that means I've got to move this unit into the 10 column, okay? Because a move from here to here means it goes up 1. So the 5, when we multiply it by 10, goes from being a unit to being a 5 being a digit in the tens column. Now I've got to put this here so I can see that 5 times 10 is 50. Okay. If you have any comments about this, or if you want me to go over anything, by the way, please join in the chat. It'd be great to hear from you, even if it's just like a thumbs up, so to say that you've understood it or whatever. But other than that, I am happy to just keep going, and I will just keep talking. So, but often it's not in this situation. But obviously, when I have classes or when I work with somebody, it's nice for me to be able to know what they're up to. But don't worry if you don't want to say anything. That's fine as well. Okay. So what we've got here is we can see that the 5 has gone from here to here. So we've moved one place that way. So what about if we had 50 times 10? So, because we've now got, we can see that this number's 50. So 50 times 10 will mean that basically this 5, well actually both of these numbers now are going to move over here. Okay, so that didn't go right. 50 times 10, so the 5 goes to here, the 0 goes to here, and the 0 goes to here like that. So this becomes 500. Okay, so this is the pattern that we have. I'm just going to shrink this here. Okay. Now, what we have next is we've got here, I'm going to put in the thousands column. So if we times this by 10 again, if we do, because this is now 500, 500 times 10 means that this number is going to shift here, this will shift here, and this will shift here. So we're going to end up with 5,000. Okay, great. So that is all very well and good. Sorry, I've just lost my slipper. Right. There we go. So we need 5,000. 500 times 10 is 5,000. Now, if I take these calculations, okay, I want to see if we can spot a pattern. So 5 times 10 equals 50. 5 times 100 equals 500. 5 times... Oh, no. That's not what I meant to do. I've been thinking in my head. 50 times 10 equals 500. And 500 times 10 equals 5,000. Okay? So, what we notice is that as we times 10, we're kind of adding a 0, okay? But it's best not to think too much about that, because what we're actually doing is we're shifting the number. So every single time we times by 10, the number shifts up one column. So if it's a unit, it goes to a 10. If it's a 10, it goes to 100. If it's 100, it goes to 1,000. If it's 1,000, it goes to a 10,000. So let's have a look at a different number. So let's say I'm going to look at 24 times by 10. Okay, so I'm going to quickly draw out my tables. Okay, so we've got units, tens, hundreds, thousands. Okay, I don't think we're going to need the thousands for this, but I put it anyway. So this number is 24, so that means I've got 2 tens and 4 units. Okay, so if I've got 2 tens and 4 units and I'm multiplying it by 10, that means that both of these numbers have to shift in this direction. Okay, so 10 lots of the 2 means that it's 10 lots of 20, so that becomes 200. So the 2 goes into this column. 10 lots of the 4 is going to be 40. Okay, so that goes into here. And then what we do is we simply, well, as you might have remembered from the past, even if we haven't put anything behind the units column, secretly behind the units, we've got tenths and we've got hundredths. Okay? And they're like secretly there. So behind here, if we haven't written anything, we've just got zeros. So what happens is, one of these zeros moves from this column and moves into here. So it's kind of everything, when we times by 10, everything gets upgraded. So this 0 goes from being here to being here. Okay, so what we end up with is 240. So here we go, 24 times 10 is 240. Now, if there are no decimals on your number and you've timesed it by 10, what you can notice is we have the number with a 0 on the end. Okay? And that's what happens. Let's think now about if I had had 24 times 100, okay? Well, yeah. 24 times 100. Now, in this case, what we have to do is we've got to think about 100 being 10 times 10, okay? Which means that we're essentially multiplying by 10 twice. So let me copy out this and move it down here. Okay, I'll just paste that down here. So what we can see here is we've already done the multiplied by 10 once. So from here to here was times 10. So what we now need to look at is to times this all by 10 again. Okay, so to times it by 10 again means that we're going to continue the diagonal shift. Okay, so that's going to go there, and these are all going to go here. I'll draw in my decimal point. So what we're doing is we've got times 10 again. So we have 2 goes to there, and then the 2 ends up here. The 4 ends up here. The 0 ends up here. This 0 gets promoted to here. And then we can put in some more zeros here if we want. Remember, there's unlimited zeros behind the decimal point. But what we can now see is that 24 times 100, in other words, 24 times by 10 twice, equals 2400. Okay, 2400. Okay, so there we have it. So 24 times 100 equals 2400. And what we can see is that that 24 is repeated here, and these 2 zeros are placed here. Okay. Now, if it hadn't been this, if there had been numbers behind the decimal place, we couldn't do that. Okay. But right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna write a couple of questions down for you to have a think about. So what I want you to think about is could you answer what is 52 times 10? And that's question 1. And can you do this question as well, which is 43 times 100? Okay. So whilst you're thinking about that, I'm just going to write down some stuff here. Units. Okay. So if you want to have a go at that. If you've done it and you want to write your answer in the comments, that would be great. If not, don't worry. That's all fine as well. But let's have a small moment here. I'm going to start putting some information in here just to fill my time. Okay, right, so let's have a look. So 52 times by 10 means 1 shift this way, okay? So this 5 is going to shift to here, okay? And this 2 is going to shift to here. And this 0 is going to shift to here. This 0 will shift to here, but it doesn't actually matter, okay? So let me do all this and see what that happens. So we get 5 goes here, 2 goes here, and then 0 goes here, and then a 0 there. So I can see that 52 times 10 equals 520. And with the pattern that I was talking about before, we can see that 52 is repeated here, and with the 0 at the end. Okay. let's now have a look at this next one. Okay, so the next one that we have here, we've got 2 shifts this time, because remember 100 is 10 times 10. So that means we're going to shift twice this way. We're going to go once, and then we're going to go twice. So let's think that. So the 4 goes from here to here, and then we shift it again to here, because remember, every time we times by 10, we shift to the left. Okay, so the 3 is going to go to here, and then it's going to go to here. This 0 is going to go to here, and then it's going to go to here. And this 0 is going to go from here to here. Okay, so what that gives us is that we would have, so times 10 once would give us 430.0. So that would be 430. And then times 10 again, the 4300. And then there would be O's here, I just haven't put them in. Okay, so what we can see is that 43 times by 100 is going to equal 4,300. Okay, so there we go. That's our answer for question 2. So hopefully that was all okay. Right, what I want to do now is I want to look at one more example without any decimals where we're looking at 1,000, and then I'm going to look at when we've got a decimal number and to see how this works. Okay, so as I said, I'm going very slowly today. But I don't want to rush through this because sometimes things get missed. So that is the purpose of these sessions. So hopefully this is helpful. And yeah, let's keep going. So what I want to do now is I said I wanted to have a look at a question, something like, let's say this time I'm going to look at 75 multiplied by 1,000. Okay, so in order to do this, I'm going to lay it out again. So I've got units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. Actually, I need to go to 10,000s here, and 10,000s. Okay, so, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 7 here and 5 here. So remember, that's my starting number, my 75. Okay, you might actually already know the answer to this, but let's just look at why it's the case. So if I'm going to be timesing this by 1,000, 1,000 is 3 moves. It's 10 times 10 times 10. So if multiplying by 10 is to multiply by 10 once, multiplying by 100 is to multiply by 10 twice, multiplying by 1,000 is to multiply by 10 3 times. So when I do that, this 7 is going to move, well, let me get my highlighter. This 7 is first of all going to move from here to here. So that would be times 10 once. Then it's going to move to here. That would be times 10 twice. And then it's going to move to there, which will be times 10 3 times. The 5 is going to move from here to here. Then it will move from here to here, then here to here. If I put a decimal here and just mark these things, so remember that these are called tenths, these are called hundredths, and these are called thousandths. Thousandths. How do you spell thousandths? Thousandths. Like this. Okay. So what we get here is we put the dot there, and then I'll put these zeros in as well. So remember, these have to move as well. Everything, when we're multiplying the number by 10, has to move column. So 75 times by 10 once would end up here as 750. Okay, when we times it by 10 again, it will end up as 7,500. And when we times it by 10 again, I'll put in that 0, it's going to end up as 75,000. Okay, and there we go. Now remember, there's always noughts here, there's always these things here, but we can just discount them. So what we can see is, if we look at our initial question, which was what is 75 times 1000, the answer will equal 75,000. And remember, we can spot the pattern for this because it's 75 and 3 zeros. Okay? And remember, however, this pattern only works when we're multiplying whole numbers by 10. This doesn't work for decimals. Okay, right. So what I want you to do is I'm going to write a question down like this. I'm just going to actually squeeze this up to here. And I hope you can still kind of see it as like a memory. I'm going to just squeeze that up to there. And then what I'd like you to have a go at is if you could quickly have a go at thinking about what would 64 times 1000 equal. Okay, here you go. Have a quick think. What would 64 times 1000 equal? And then I'll answer it, and then we can move on. Okay. Hopefully, so remember, I'm just going to repurpose this diagram actually. So if I just get rid of that, get rid of this. Okay, so what I can do is if this was 64, what I'd have had this time, I'd have had a 6 in the tens column and a 4 in the units column, and they would have done all the shifts as well. It's not so nice without the squares. And then what we'd have ended up with, we'll end up with 6, 4, 0, 0. So here we go, 64, 1, 2, 3. So there we go, hopefully you got that 64 times 1000 is 64,000. Right, let's now have a look at what happens when we have a decimal, okay? So let's have a look at what happens when we have a decimal. Here we go. Let's say we have got let's say we have one sec. What's going on? Let's say we've got 1.04 times 10. Okay, so remember to do this, once you've got the hang of this, you don't have to write out units, tens, hundreds all the time. But this is just until we've got the hang of it. So, so let me write down my units, tens, hundreds. Okay, so what I can see is I've got 1 unit. Oh, hang on a second. I don't have any of this stuff, but I do have stuff here. Okay, so this time I've got 1.04. So remember, these ones are called tenths. Okay, and that a tenth is written like this. And remember, this is 1 out over 10. 1 over 10 equals 1 divided by 10. 1 divided by 10, which equals 0.1. Okay, and so that's what we would have on the calculator. If we look at this next one, we've got tenths, we've got hundredths. Okay, hundredths. And these would be like 1 over 100. And that's because that equals 1 divided by 100, which equals 0.01. Okay, so we can continue with this. We've got 100%. So if we've got 1.04 multiplied by 10, what that gives us here is this 1 moves into this place here, this 0 moves into this place, and this 4 moves into this place here. So the whole pattern stays the same. Multiplying by 10 always just shifts stuff up 1 column. Okay, so this 1 will be here, this 0 will be here, and this 4 will be here. So here we go, we can say that 1.04 times 10 equals 10.4. Okay? Right. Hopefully that is all good. Let's have a go at another one of those, just to make sure that we're getting the practice. So let's say this time I'm going to look at, let's have, this is interesting. Let's have 50.13. Okay, here we go, 50.13. and let's times this by 100. Okay, so 50.13 multiplied by 100. So remember, I'm going to write my units out again. So what we can do is we get our units, we've got our tens, we've got our hundreds, we've got our thousands. Okay, and then if I put a decimal point here, we've got our tenths, and then we've got our hundredths. Okay, so let me write this number down. So we've got a 5 in the tens column, a 0 in the units column, and then we've got 0.13. Now we're multiplying it by 100, so that means that each thing is going to move 2 columns, okay? Because 100, remember, is 10 times 10. So essentially what we're doing is we're timesing by 10 twice. So we've got here the 5, we'll go from the tens column here once. Okay, this first bit that I'm doing is to times it by 10 for the first time. So we've got 0 will move to here, the 1 will move to here, and the 3 will move to here. So we can see that 50.13 times 10, okay, would be 501.3. And then if we times it by 10 again, what we get is we can times by 10 here. Okay, so this 5 continues to move over here, the 0 continues to move over, the 1 continues to move over, and the 3 continues to move over. And so the 5 ends up there, the 0 ends up here, the 1 ends up here, the 3 ends up here. There's still a decimal place, so I can see that 50.13 times 100 will be 5,013. Okay, so we can see we've moved 2 spaces over. Some people like to point out that to times by 100 is to shift the decimal place once, twice. Okay, so if we think about it, there's still a decimal place here, we just don't bother putting it. So this decimal place has moved the number of zeros that we had. So we went once and we went twice. Okay, let's have another go at a question like this. I'm going to repurpose this information here. So let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this. And let's this time have, let's have what is 0.07 times 1,000. Okay, what is 0.07 times 1,000? So I'll leave that for you to think about for a little bit, and then I'll join in shortly. Let me get rid of that 10 times 10 bit because that's misleading. Well, if we remember that 100 is 10 times 10, what we need to remember for this one is that 1,000 is 10 times 10 times 10. Okay, so there we go. So let's continue with this. So what we've got here is, if we've got 100 is 10 times 10, 1,000 is 10 times 10 times 10. And so let's put in this information here. So I'm going to put this number in first. So we've got 0.07 as our starting number. Okay, so I'm going to do this all in one go this time. So this 0 is going to move once for times 10, another for times 10 again, and another for times 10 again. So here, that would be times 10. That's 1 times 10 there. Here to here gives us another times 10. And here to here gives us this third times 10, which is the times 1,000. So this 0 is going to do the same moves. So it's going to go from here to here for times 10 once. It's going to go from here to here for times 10 twice. And it's going to go from here to here for times 10 for a third time. And then what I've got this time, I've got this one, which is going to go from here to here for times 10 once, here to here for times 10 twice, and here to here for times 10 for the third time. So we go times 10 goes to 0.7, times 10 again goes to 0.0, well, just goes to 7, times 10 for the third time goes to 70. Remember, there's still zeros here, but if we've only got zeros behind the decimal place, we don't have to write them anymore. So this equals 70. Okay, well, we could think about it as 70 or 70.00, but we don't have to write that 00. We can just leave that as 70. So 0.07 times 1,000 is 70. Right, okay. I recognise we're actually starting to run out of time here. I seem to, without anyone to interrupt me, I actually seem to talk for a lot longer than I do when people do interrupt me. So that's all right. What I want to do is I just want to quickly give you one question like this, okay, and then I'll relate it to the functional skills element, okay? So what we've got here is we have got, okay, yeah, let me just delete that bit. I'll leave that up there for some sort of inspiration. Let me just kind of move all that over here. And then the question I'm going to ask you this time is, what is, oh no, let's write it in black just for consistency. Okay, the question I'm asking this time is, what is 0.013, I've run out of space, times, let me move that, actually let's just delete that. What is 0.013 times 100? Okay, so here's the question that I want you to have a look at. Okay, have a think about it. And see what you can do. I'm going to start setting up the scaffolding for it. So we've got units, we've got tens, okay, we've got the decimal point, we've got tenths, we've got hundredths, we've got thousandths. Okay, so let's put this information on here. So now I've got that, I can put this information here. So we're starting with 0.013. I've said times 100 this time, okay? So there's that to think about. So remember, 100 is times 10 times 10. So 100 means we're making two moves. So we're going to go once and then twice, okay? So that 0 is going to go from here to here. That 0 is going to go from here to here. That 1 is going to go from here to here. That 3 is going to go from here to here. So let's have a look. So this is going to be 0, 0. Oh, I should have done the whole line. It makes it a lot easier. 0, 0, 1, 3. Now remember, the decimal point follows its way down. And so there we go. So what we can see is, when we times it by 10 once, we get to 0.13, and then when we times it by 10 again, we get to 1.3. Okay, so here we go. 0.013 times 100 equals this. So this equals 1.3. Okay, right. Right, well, thank you very much for sticking with me this long. I recognise I haven't actually got to the bits of metric conversions, but I am going to have to stop there, I'm afraid, for today. But tomorrow we are looking at dividing by 10, which is going to be a similar thing to this. But yes, so I hope that has been useful for you, and I hope you've had that. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will well, I will see you tomorrow for the exam paper walkthrough. Okay. If not, okay, great. And thank you very much and goodbye. See ya.